Hello, hello, hello. My name is Tim Cleaver. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to make a little video, just a little video, about my thoughts on Elden Ring. So I just beat this game last night. I was up till like 6 o'clock in the morning playing it. First playthrough. My total time playing it was just under 202 hours. 202 hours. And I was level 168 when I beat it. Like the amount of content in this game is mind-blowing and staggering. Like, this is a complete Game of the Year edition without it being labeled as such. Like, how are they going to top this? How are they going to top this? So many fond memories. So many very, very cool areas. I feel like that's like the ultimate definition of like a journey, like an epic journey going through so many different lands. And I chose the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending. Well, I didn't choose it, I guess. Maybe I did, but that was the only option I had at the end of the game. I wanted to go for the Age of the Stars ending, I think it's called, but I didn't see that option available. But anyway, that's what New Game Plus is for, and New Game Plus 2. Um, I would say at least like half of the bosses in my top 10 FromSoft boss list are from this game now. Like Elden Beast for sure, Fire Giant, Moog, Placido Sax. Granted, some of the optional bosses are kind of forgettable, or they not forgettable, but they kind of blend in together. So maybe it is forgettable in some ways, but I guess that's to be expected when there's what, like 180 or 160 some bosses. Yeah, I made sure to like cover uh every inch of the map as well as I could. There were a few points where I I had to go somewhere, like for example, uh near the end where I got, oh yeah, Millennia would be another boss in that top 10 list. Yeah, I got her Great Rune, and it said to go to like uh an isolated bridge, and I had no idea where that was. So luckily some people in my chat helped me out, and I realized I was there a long time ago. I just completely forgot about it. So I guess that's a good thing where the game gives you so many locations and like just cool encounters and funny little uh just happenings in the game, like the dancing women in the windmill village, and man, I still remember like coming out of the first tutorial dungeon there into the lands between, and getting to that first camp, like what is it, the uh Stormvale camp, I think, right before the little ascent to Margit. And yeah, that I was struggling with that for a long time. Um, and just like gradually getting better and just exploring and getting new gear and better gear and slowly, gradually leveling up. Maybe that's why my playtime was higher, like in the 200 range, because I just stopped and smelled the roses once in a while. I did not want to rush it. That's for sure. So I'm also gonna watch and react to VaatiVidya's Elden Rings lore explained. So this video that I'm gonna watch is almost half an hour long. So I can imagine that this video that I'm recording now that you're watching is going to be at least an hour long, because I'm going to be stopping it as often as I want to just give my thoughts, because yeah, I've got more questions than when I first had at the beginning of the game when I first started playing it. Like, I know there's a big like family tree involved, no pun intended, where uh I forgot exactly what piece of gear it was, but it said that Radagon was married to both Marika and Renala. He married Renala to study sorcery, and he married Marika to study incantations. And yeah, just so many questions about like why and how and where and who. And I hope this video answers some of them and brings up even more questions, probably. But yeah, let's get into it. VaatiVidya's Elden Ring's lore explained. And I will link this video in the description. And if you would like to see my entire first playthrough, I'll have that link to the playlist in the description as well. Yes. And the last video should be up on YouTube on Monday, probably. And I'm recording this on Sunday. So yeah, I beat this game last night. I was up till 6 o'clock. I was debating about whether to stay up for another like 2 hours and record this, but I was just too tired and it was too late. And I figured I'd get some sleep. I got like 5 hours sleep because all I thought about was Elden Ring. I woke up with, or I fell asleep with Elden Ring in my head, and I woke up with more Elden Ring in my head. I even had a fucking dream about Lobos Jr., one of my favorite YouTubers and Twitch streamers. I dreamt I was like at a convention of some sort, and I met him. And for some reason, I had like long sleeves that were covering up my hands for some reason, and I asked him to like pull them back so that I could shake his hand. I remember that. And in my dream, he was shorter than I expected. So I don't know what that means. If there's any dream interpreters out there, please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, let's get into it. This is VaatiVidya's Elden Ring's lore explained.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will.
Yeah, so we've heard of the Greater Will in item descriptions. I thought it was just more of like a concept rather than an outer god, like a being.
There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the Great Ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings, they're all-powerful, and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world.
Was that Eye of Sauron, was that an outer god too?
The Greater Will may be most of all. To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing a beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the Greater Will.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
No, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order. As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring itself is made up of runes of power.
Okay, so before we continue with that, I had a theory about the Erdtree at the beginning of the game when I first started playing. I think that it's just like a collection of the most powerful souls and runes and beings in the lands between and beyond, just concentrated into like one seed, perhaps, and that was sprouted from that. And my theory is what leads me to believe that is because when we die in the game, we leave like a little sapling that looks like a tiny tree with the potential to grow bigger. And although that hasn't increased in size as our journey through the game progresses, and like it hasn't increased in size as our runes dropped progresses, but Yeah, there's a few item descriptions that kind of clue in on that and detail that. But yeah, let's continue. The Elden Ring itself is made up of runes of power.
Some great, some small, that together represent a sort of logic for the world to follow. Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists.
Yeah, so that was another thing that I didn't think that the Elden Ring was an actual ring that you put on your finger. At first, I thought it was like the rings of a tree because you know how apparently every time a tree gets older, there's like more rings in the trunk of the tree. So I thought it could be that, or just like an order, like a round table, like a collection, uh, a gathering of different minds and ideas, like a team maybe, or that's the wrong word, but just like a an order. Yeah, yeah,
But two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect, where actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots.
Hmm.
Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erdtree, which towers over the lands between. But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erdtree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast. No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came. There were other beings here. There were other factions here. There were other gods here. And there was even another great tree here before the Erdtree.
yeah.
And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erdtree comes in.
I like twists.
So, there are incantations in the game called aspects of the Crucible. According to their descriptions, these are manifestations of the Erdtree's primal vital energies. And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together." But how could all life be blended together in the Erdtree if the Erdtree appeared after life existed?
Hmm.
Well, there can only be one answer, right? That the Erdtree is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This ancient tree was called the Great Tree.
Interesting. Interesting. I had a theory, another theory about the Erd tree that it's not like a real tree as we know it, because it looks like a hologram, like a holographic tree, like it's not real. It just looks like a projection or something. And and yeah, because I did spend 200 hours playing the game, I did make it to the Haley tree, and like as soon as I saw its icon on the map, like up north there, I remember commenting on my live stream that it was about the same size as the Erd tree on the map, and that it could be like another tree or like a copy of it or a backup or something. Because if you guys remember the movie Contact with like Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey back in like 1997 or something, uh, they built a device to be able to like travel through space, basically. But they didn't build one; they built two. Because why build one when you could build two, right? Uh, and I thought that was like the same thing with these trees, where maybe the the Erd tree was like a copy of the Halig tree, which was poisoned and just like burned down and destroyed or something.
So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the Greater Will to have commandeered. It might even be the reason the Lands Between is important to the Greater Will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon. For example, the Knot Talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. Enemies related to the Crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned, enslaved, or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erdtree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell, protection of the Erdtree, in the beginning everything was in opposition to the Erdtree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order.
In Marika's own words, the Erdtree governs all.
And that's another thing about Marika. Like, in all promo videos and pictures I've seen of the game before I got to the final boss, she's got her arms outstretched and like from a top-down view. I thought it was just like a pose kind of stuck in time, almost like Praise the Sun, but or just like maybe like a bow or a curtsy or something. But no, it seemed like when we got to the final boss, what was it, Radagon? It looked like she was crucified on, I guess, the rune or the ring or the symbol of it. Yeah, because she had like shackles on her wrist, it looked like. And that was mind-blowing to me. What a great fucking game. Holy shit.
The choice is thine. Become one with the Order, or divest thyself of it, to wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the lands between. To this end, it has the Two Fingers, who are its envoys. The Two Fingers heirloom has a weird picture of them, but it reads, "Of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith." These words are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the lands between. They pass down the wisdom of the Two Fingers, or at least they used to.
Your fingers, please, your fingers. I can read them.
What was up with the subtitles
appear
there?
to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their two fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of Two Fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the Two Fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the Two Fingers clearly have more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an Elden Beast to do its bidding instead.
Yeah. So the Elden Beast is like a visual representation of the Greater Will, even though it probably doesn't look anything like it. Probably the Greater Will probably doesn't look like anything. And yeah, speaking about the Two Fingers, I hear that there's one more finger involved somewhere. 3 fingers that I took on to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame. What an ending that was. I guess we set fire to the whole world. I didn't even go back into my save file into like the lands between after I beat the last boss to see if the sky was actually on fire. I just stopped at the round table hold.
Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of Two Fingers go still because they're forced to commune with the Greater Will for guidance.
When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass. No matter for me. But you, how will you ever manage the wait?
So the Greater Will needs a physical manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will, but what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore, and
Holy
there's a
shit.
reason she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls.
Okay.
Except, unlike Gwyn, Marika didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except
See there,
that
that's what I was
she's
talking
of
about.
the Newman race, which is actually
Crucified.
an origin that you can choose in the character selection screen.
Yeah.
Newman come from outside the lands between, and are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. At some point, Marika was chosen as an Empyrean. What is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is a being chosen by the Fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Empyrean, Marika received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf.
More questions.
Shadowbound to its Empyrean by the two Fingers. Luna Princess Rani is another example of an Empyrean with a shadowbound beast. You would have met Blythe. These creatures are the Empyrean's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery.
You know, I don't think I met this guy Blythe on my playthrough. Maybe once, but that was very early on, and I don't recall what happened. Also, yeah, like when Vaati compared Marika to Gwyn, that helps a little bit because I'm certainly more familiar with Dark Souls than Elden Ring, and any comparisons made between those two would help me figure out this game a bit more. Yeah.
Marika's shadow was a beast called Malakath. Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is destined death? Well, according to Enya, it's the rune of death.
The rune of death goes by two names. The other is destined death.
We mentioned earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of runes, and at some point, maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marika plucked the rune of death from the Elden Ring. She gave the rune of death to Malakath, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim.
So like a concentrated death. That can only be a bad thing, right?
Now, some of you might be asking, if death is removed from the lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off,
It is a dog.
shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erdtree. Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erdtree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have, but this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best. As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erdtree. In this way, thanks to the Erdtree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erdtree.
However, some spirits never return to the Erdtree, and they rise within death as corpses or skeletons instead.
Yeah, so that ties in with what I thought earlier, that the Erdtree is just like comprised of a bunch of dead beings, and the tree has like absorbed their souls and power and runes and all that.
So this was the new order, and it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the rune of death was removed, when destined death was taken, this is when order became the Golden Order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marika's Golden Order. So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marika the Eternal for her removal of destined death. It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her Golden Order. There was war with the Stormlord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erdtree. There was war with the ancient dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist time and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Empyrean to enforce its will, Marika herself needed someone to wage war. So, there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord.
So many different factions and warring sides. It's incredible. Incredible.
The man chosen was Horalu, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield. His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marika married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord. To suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within, Horalu took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Horalu, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marika, and a certified demigod.
Maybe that's why beasts are used to serve order, because they don't really think, they just do. Like a lion doesn't think about killing its prey. Or maybe it does, but it's like it doesn't feel remorse. It just does it because it's a lion and it needs to eat. Yeah.
Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erdtree, and Mohg, who became Lord of Blood. You might think that Godric was another demigod.
So they're
child,
twins
but
then?
He actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn. Anyway, we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that. But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle.
16,
who
wow.
were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erdtree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erdtree.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount.
That was a
Let
cool
a
moment.
new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life."
Yeah, I remember fighting the fire giant took me quite a long time. Over a few days to beat it. And yeah, of course, total relief and satisfaction and like joy when I actually did beat it. But yeah, there's like the 4 belfries up in Liurnia, right? And I took the first one, not knowing that I guess we could only take one at a time because I only had the one key at the time. So I took that to Crumbling Farum Azula, which I guess is the worst choice you can make at the game at that time. And yeah, I got my ass kicked so many times there early on fighting those 2 beastmen there, and seeing like proper Crumbling Farum Azula from that vantage point up there, and just wondering how to get to it. Wow.
Brandish the Elden Ring, for the age.
And yeah, just the Crucible. Yeah, you could see the Crucible from from that, the crumbling Farum Azula. And I didn't really think anything of it, which I guess was a mistake because apparently anything you could see in this game you could get to, right? So then later on, when I actually did beat the fire giant and got to the crucible, I realized that the crucible was a big deal. And then going back to the 4 belfries and then back to that separated part of crumbling Farum Azula, and then seeing the crucible again, and then again from proper Farum Azula, that just blew my mind. How it just like came all together. Yeah, that was a big moment. Absolutely incredible.
Of the Erdtree.
The Erdtree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Lanedell, the capital city of the Erdtree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels. It loomed overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erdtree burial was one of the highest honors a hero could receive. One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marika herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Lanedell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erdtree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest, Liurnia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again. And I mean that literally, because there was not just one, but 2 wars fought here. And in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden, nor for the Moon. And I suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away.
Yep.
And it's bullshit. Actually, it's probably
Yep.
because of the carrier knights, who, according to their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills. And despite numbering fewer than 20, this
The lobsters and the sorcerers in regular carrier, those are a pain.
power made them a match for even the champions of gold in battle. These enchanted knights were anointed by the Lunar Queen, a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Caria as royalty in this land.
That was another cool
With her
boss fight.
bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where glintstone sorcery was studied, and united the Carian royal family and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head of this great golden army was Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host when he met Lady Renala in battle.
These 2 champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala.
Interestingly enough, that's what the player uses to grant absolution, celestial dew. And I did that once, not knowing what I did wrong. I guess maybe shunning Melina, the maiden, so I can become the Lord of Frenzied Flame.
The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
You might think it strange that the Greater Will would permit this union, but it's not too odd, all things considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just 2 sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic, and Rykard, who pioneered new hex sorceries and would go on to feed himself to a great serpent.
That was voluntary? I didn't know that.
It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts about the Golden Order that she had had a hand in creating.
In Marika's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order Through understanding of the proper way, our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's
Am I seeing things, or is the what's her name, Melina? Is her hair changing color throughout the game? Because when we first meet her, I think her hair is blonde, and there it was kind of strawberry reddish, and at the end it was black, dark brown. So is that just like because of the ending I chose, or is that canon, or is that like consistent throughout all playthroughs? I don't know.
It's at this point that we should talk about Marika's motivations, her character. This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants.
There it
faced the
is.
Storm Lord alone. And then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell. And it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him away.
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
This became known as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord,
Yeah, there it is again.
Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord.
So, Marika had two spouses, her second being Radagon, and he had two spouses, the second being Marika. This actually does feel like a Game of Thrones episode where the family tree is so confusing to me so far. Like, I'm sure it'll make sense in the future, but right now I'm still so confused.
The mystery.
I think it's a lot of the names that sound similar, and that they start with same initials, which I guess is George R.R. Martin's influence, because most of the main characters' names either start with G, like Godfrey, Godric, R, Radagon, Rykard, Rennala, and M, Melina, Melania, Marika, yeah, and so on.
Endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Rennala aside, and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Whatever the case, as a part of this union, Radagon's prior 3 children with Rennala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree. Rennala was broken by this, and so was her country, Liurnia. The Queen's set reads, when Renala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him. And then those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion after all. In the way
I like how they actually use the family tree concept as like a literal family tree. That's genius, I think. It's obviously genius.
wake of Radagon's betrayal and Renala's
Hey, Burger King, I could go for a
Liurnia
Whopper.
struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carian royals on the other. And it's here, during the age of the Erdtree, that Lunar Princess Rani, daughter of Renala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
It happened during the golden age of the Erdtree, long before the Shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
So Rani did all that. She stole a portion of the Rune of Death, aka Destined Death, to kill, what was his name? Godfrey?
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marika is behind the entirety of your tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, all you really need to know, in terms of the timeline at least, is this. After the marriage of Marika and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small.
So I think of the Elden Ring breaking into runes as like the Dark Soul, like the literal Dark Soul from Dark Souls, split up and divided between Manus mainly and I guess divided out into all of humanity, and I guess maybe a bit of the Light Soul, or the Lord Soul, the Light Soul, which Gwyn had and gave a bit to Seath, granting him dukedom, and then a bit to the Four Kings, right? Yeah.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
What
Of course,
happened there?
the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika.
What? I didn't know that. Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. What? Marika is Radagon? What? What? I thought...
Or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marika's own words,
What?
O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will also go on to be one of the biggest unknowns as we move forward. For example, the wording, "thou art yet to become me," reinforces that Marika and Radagon were two separate entities before the Shattering. However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya says that
The demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika.
but how can this be if Radagon married Renala and had those demigod children? The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marika and he just went over there to seduce Renala long ago. I'll present more concrete theories in the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think? While
I
you
think I'm
can figure out
confused.
a ton of Elden Ring story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this story special. At any rate, the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and
So what I was thinking earlier about Radagon, they're missing his left hand. I thought that him missing his left hand was like the formation, or that was what birthed the two fingers, and I guess eventually the three fingers. Because yeah, the fingers make up the hand, just like branches make up a tree. That rune inside his chest right there, that's what I feel in my brain right now. Total chaos and confusion.
regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erdtree for the crime of the Shattering.
Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the vision's vessel.
The conjoined Radagon and Marika even had two demigod children of their own, Mikola and Millennia. These two children were born afflicted. Mikola was cursed with eternal childhood, and Millennia harbored a horrific rot within. Even so, these two children were both chosen as Empyreans. They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the greater will.
What a fun boss fight that was too, Millennia. What a simple and surprisingly not implemented yet mechanic where every time she hits you, she restores health. So not only do you lose health as the player character, but her character restores health. And yeah, I remember fighting Millennia over a couple of streams, over maybe a week or so, or half a week. And I was mainly using the Star Scourge Greatswords, two-handed, and sometimes the Troll's Hammer, two-handed as well. And we were, I guess, making some progress. I could consistently get her down to halfway of her second phase, usually getting to her second phase, but just not beating her. So some friends in my chat on Twitch, I guess they were recommending the Bloodhound's Fang, which I hadn't really considered because I was going for a strength build, and that's more of a dex weapon. So I I went to that infamous farming spot, that overlook in the River of Blood by Moog there, where that you shoot the bird with the arrow and it runs at you, but it falls off the cliff, and there's a little area with a bunch of enemies that are pretty easy to farm. So I did that. I farmed for 100,000 runes, so I could buy the upgrade stones needed to upgrade the Bloodhound Fang. So I meticulously checked exactly how many of each stone I needed. It's 12 per 3 ranks, 2 and then 4 and then 6. Multiply that by 8 times for the 8 different steps needed. But after I bought them and I went back to the blacksmith to upgrade them, I realized that I bought the wrong set of runes or the wrong set of stones. I needed somber smithing stones, not regular smithing stones. But now I have, I guess, extra smithing stones for another weapon if I need to upgrade that. But yeah, story being, I eventually did upgrade the Bloodhound Fang. Finally kicked Millennia's ass after only like 2 or 3 tries with the new fully upgraded Bloodhound Fang, and that felt so good. That was so satisfying.
Perhaps the Greater Will was just desperate to find a worthy successor, and indeed in the Shattering War to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last.
Hey, that's me!
Which we'll talk about in the next main lore video. I should probably also mention here that if you become a patron, you'll see upcoming lore videos early, as that's one of the rewards you get if you pledge to the $3 tier. And if you think my channel really adds a lot of value to the Souls games for you to the point where you pledge $20, then in this new tier, you'll receive a new mug every 3 months that has a unique design on it.
That's cool.
Games by From Software. There are 4 to collect. The first one you'll get is
The Light Discovered,
Dark Souls, then Elden Ring, then Sekiro, and finally Bloodborne.
Well, I want the Dark Souls one at least.
Fantastic art that I worked on with an amazing artist named Chu.
I want the middle one.
Anyway, I figured this is the right place to end this video because the information here is going to be overwhelming. I bet it probably was too overwhelming, you know? It took me ages to commit these names and the relationships they had with other characters to memory, so I hope you guys are doing alright.
I guess it does help to like physically write down the names and connect them to instill them in your mind and reinforce them. Yeah, definitely. Which I might do at some point too.
One thing that helped me a lot was that we designed an enormous mind map with pretty much all of Elden Ring's lore, all of its item descriptions, all of its dialogues, all of the relationships between characters that we can think of. We added all of this together and it helped a ton in learning about the story and visualizing it all. And one day I will make this asset available to you all because I think after doing it, I think this is the quintessential way to piece together the story, and I think giving you guys this asset eventually will make that accessible for people. So I'm really excited about that.
Make that into like a poster, like like plastic covered. What's the term? Yeah, just like cover it in a slick plastic so you don't get any stains on it or anything.
I want to thank Absa and Zard for accepting the paid task of helping me put all the raw data into this mind map so that I could better understand everything. I want to thank Paragod for fulfilling all of my footage requests and creating so many cinematic scenes for this video and for you all to enjoy. And I last of all want to thank John Devlin for the incredible thumbnail. And of course, thank you for watching. There are some really exciting things ahead, and I actually believe this might be the best story that From Software have ever put together. I just think not only are there so many amazing item descriptions, but so many of them are impactful. There are so many moments where you piece together the story and have like a eureka moment. And
Yep.
I'm enjoying it so much. But now I'm gonna go and play the game a little bit because I've been editing this video for too long. So, see you next time.
All right. Wow. Yeah, that was a good video. That was a good video, and still, like, I've still got so many questions. I'll have to watch this a few times to like fully understand and just really remember the different names and their relation to each other. Holy shit. Yeah, like when I was streaming, I told myself that I'd move on to a different game after I beat it. And although I still want to play different games, I think I do want to focus on Elden Ring for still a little bit. New Game Plus, different builds, different challenge runs. Just it's so much fun. And that's all it comes down to. It's just fun and just like intriguing and challenging. Like I don't know how I can go back to a game like Skyrim after this, where it's just so not bland, but monotonous almost. Like kind of once you swing one sword in Skyrim or Elder Scrolls, you kind of swung them all. Yeah, and it's funny because when I first got Skyrim and I was a little bit familiar with Dark Souls, I beat it maybe a few times already. I was wanting like a Dark Souls type mod for Skyrim, like an open world Dark Souls game where you'd have like a limited number of flasks for every dungeon. You had to like maybe go back to town after every dungeon or after every boss fight. And just like more stipulations that make it not necessarily hard but challenging. Like that's another thing about this game that I would say that Elden Ring is certainly the easiest point of entry for like newcomers to this Soulsborne series, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, because it's got other ways of like restoring your health, your flasks, besides resting at the checkpoints, at the sites of grace, or at the bonfires. Like you find those the scabbards or the dung beetles rolling around, which you can destroy to get your flasks back. And some flasks just restore automatically after certain encounters. And yeah, there's just so many different ways of playing it, so many different weapons, and it's not just the weapons themselves; it's the arts and the skills of the weapons, the unique skills, where it's almost like there's a specific and unique magic to each one that, although you press like the same buttons, they just do different things, and there's different timings involved and all that. Just an unbelievable game. If I had one criticism of it, and it's probably rare because I've only heard one other person talk about it, and that's just when I was playing on PS4. I just have like a base PS4 that I've had for a few years. The audio would cut out pretty frequently. Like it wasn't a rare thing. Like just the music and the atmospheric music would just like mute for a second or two at a time and just come back, and that was kind of jarring and annoying and unfortunate because otherwise I'd say it's a perfect game otherwise. And it absolutely lived up to the hype. One of the rare occasions where not only does it exceed it, it surpasses it with flying carpets of magical color. Like, I wasn't skeptical, but I was just like unsure when I first heard about this game how they would make it work. Like early on in this video, in Vaati's video, there was like a little snippet of like the Tarnished standing on, I guess, a cliff, and then a valley in the middle, and then two other sets of cliffs on the left and right. And that was like one of the first images I saw way back in the day when this was first announced. Just like an open world Dark Souls game with a horse, and you could go anywhere, like an open world Dark Souls game. And of course, it is an open world Dark Souls game, but much more than that. And I hope they make DLC. I don't know if I think I do want Elden Ring 2, but I don't know how they would make it work. And if they make an Elden Ring 2, I hope they make an Elden Ring 3, because this would be a perfect trilogy. Yeah. I'm gonna go back and play it. And yeah, if you want to join me in my playthroughs, follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/TimCleaver. Yeah, I'll be streaming that for the next little while. So I'm recording this on Sunday. Hopefully, this will be up on YouTube maybe Tuesday. After I upload the last VOD of my last episode of my first playthrough. So that should be up Monday, hopefully. Yeah, if you have any comments, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you thought about this game. Let me know what you thought about the lore and let me know what you thought about my interpretation of the lore. If you think I'm right or wrong, or if you know I'm right or wrong, please, that's even better. Please let me know. Yeah. 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 So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.